Hello and a big welcome to EIC, Essential Impact Coaching. Essential Impact Coaching is a series of 5 videos that will support your understanding of the fundamentals of a coaching process that brings about real and lasting change. You will, I'm sure, enjoy and learn a great deal from these. I'm Tony Swainston and I work as a personal performance coach and organisational change consultant and trainer. In other words, I work with people on a one-to-one basis, supporting them to move from the present situation or current reality to achieving their goals. In a similar way, I also work with whole organisations, helping them to achieve their goals. With organisations, this will often involve an analysis of the present culture that people perceive exists in the organisation, the current culture that people would like, and then the interactions that will enable them to move towards this ideal culture. The interactions can be varied, and this is where the real fun and learning and change and ultimate improvement takes place. I won't go into detailed analysis here of culture, but it is worth noting the results of research done by Cotter and Heskett. They analysed 207 organisations over an 11-year period and came up with some remarkable evidence. The first thing that they did was an intensive analysis to divide the organisations into what they termed defensive and constructive cultures. Then they looked at how these organisations had performed over the 11-year period, and the results are astonishing. The gross income or turnover of the organisations with defensive cultures rose over the 11-year period by 166%. The share price of these organisations also went up by 74%. However, the net income or profit only increased by 1%. Now let's compare this with the figures of the organisations with constructive cultures. In the same 11-year period, the turnover of these organisations went up by a massive 682%. That's over 4 times more than for the defensive organisations. The share price also went up by 901%. That's 12 times more than the defensive organisations. But most surprisingly and quite astonishingly is the fact that the profit or net income rose by 756%. That is, of course, 756 times greater profit than for the organisations with defensive cultures. These figures give quantitative evidence of the impact of culture on the bottom line figures in any organisation. For non-profit making organisations, the fact is that the outcomes, no matter what these might be, are significantly higher in organisations with constructive cultures rather than organisations with defensive cultures. So anyone who thinks that developing a healthy constructive culture in an organisation is just not worth it is simply wrong. In simple terms, when people feel good about the organisation, they work and they perform far better. And this is why I'm passionate about working with organisations on their culture, no matter what the starting point or the present culture might be. Now let's move on to an overview of the 5 videos that make up the Essential Impact Coaching series. The first one, this one, looks at defining coaching. I'll give you 3 definitions of coaching that will enable you and enhance your understanding of coaching. I'll also help you to understand what coaching actually is and what it isn't. And I'll take this further by distinguishing between coaching, counselling and mentoring. And there can often be a great deal of confusion with these. The second video looks at the 3 skills of coaching, and these are listening, questioning and reviewing. And reviewing is about reflecting and clarifying. There are a number of other important skills that we'll look at in this video, but these 3 form the foundation of effective impact coaching. The third video looks at the GROW model of coaching. This is the model that's used extensively in coaching as the framework for a coaching conversation. Its power is in its simplicity. When you begin to use it, you'll see how effective it is in supporting a client to move towards their goal. GROW is an acronym that stands for goal, the goal the client has, reality, the current situation, options, all the possible options are looked at, and will, the actions the client will take from the possible options. The fourth video looks at the beliefs and principles of coaches and the benefits of coaching. It covers 4 key beliefs of coaches and 10 principles that coaches follow. It also looks at the benefits of coaching from the point of view of the coach, the coachee, and this is the name given to the person being coached, the coachee, and the organisation. The final video looks at how coaching often involves shifting or changing beliefs, and I'll illustrate this in what I know you'll find is both a fun and informative way. So there we go. Some great stuff in store for you, and let's kick off with the video 1 of Essential Impact Coaching. And by the way, my details are as follows. If you want to contact me after watching any or all of these videos, please do so. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about supporting you and or your organisation through coaching and organisational culture change and growth. And to put this video once again into context, it's the first of 5 videos and it looks at defining coaching. So once again, we'll look here at 3 definitions of coaching. And the 3 definitions, first of all, the 3 definitions of coaching, and then what coaching is and what coaching isn't, and what coaching, counselling and mentoring are, and the differences between them. So let's start out with the 3 coaching definitions. And these I've found really very useful, and I'm sure they'll help you as well. And the first quote is that coaching is the art of facilitating the performance and learning and development of another. And this is from Effective Coaching by Miles Downey. I've emphasized here facilitating because, as we'll come back to later on, coaching is not about telling people what they should do. As a coach, you're there to support their growth, and as I've emphasized here as well, their performance, learning and development. The views of the coach are frankly irrelevant. All that's important is the movement of the coachee towards their own preferred solution or goal. And the second quote is, rather long one here, but it says, coaching is a relationship and process by which a coach facilitates the success of others through a belief in that person's or team's ability to find their own solutions and to enhance performance. Coaching seeks to maintain a positive, strength-focused state of mind. And this is taken from Coaching Solutions by Will Thomas and Alistair Smith. Once again here we see the word facilitate. I've also highlighted belief because we as coaches must believe in the capacity of our client to arrive at their own solution. The more I work with clients or coachees, the more I realize the immense potential that lies within all of us. Psychologists estimate that we use around 10 to 20% of the capacity of our brains, and this is just one example of the untapped potential that we possess. I've also emphasized the fact that the solutions that a client acts upon are their own solutions. As a coach, I'm constantly on guard not to offer what I think my client should do. This would be counterproductive, though I understand that at the outset in coaching it can also seem counterintuitive. We live in a world and a culture where it seems to be the case that everyone wants to give everyone else their own version of the reality or truth of any situation, together with the best way forward. The only truth in this seems to be that we're all different, And we all have our own unique way of doing absolutely anything. What suits one person would not necessarily suit another. Again, I've highlighted enhancing performance, and I've also highlighted strength focused. As I will go into in a later video, a lot of time in organisations is spent looking at weaknesses and trying then to fill the gaps with what I call reactive polyfiller. Coaching is about being proactive, and it's also about looking at the innate skills, talents and aptitudes of individuals. It is about looking at the strengths they possess and therefore how they can use these to tackle any challenge. And the third quote is, coaching is about unlocking a person's potential to maximize their performance. It's about helping them to learn rather than teaching them. And this is taken from Coaching Performance by John Whitmore. Once again, I've emphasized here unlocking a person's potential, remembering that each of us has immense potential. I've emphasized performance because coaching, in my view, has got to be solution focused and therefore moving towards improved performance. And I've emphasized as well helping them learn, which is very different from teaching them. Okay, so now with some understanding of what coaching is from these definitions, let me give you some further specifics about what coaching is and isn't. Well, it's important to note that coaching is a process of helping another individual realize their innate potential, as I've already said. In doing this, it delivers fulfillment both for the individual and the related organization. It therefore involves motivation, because without motivation we'll never get the best results from ourselves or from others. It involves excellence. Coaching works on maximizing the excellence of an individual and therefore the excellence they bring to the organization. Achievement. Obviously linked to the above, constructive individuals and constructive organizations are always seeking achievement in all that they do. Intrinsic learning. It is about what is inside the individual, what is important to them and what they feel they ultimately need to do to improve or move towards their solution. It's not about things that are externally imposed. And intense satisfaction. I really know of no professional intervention that will bring about a greater sense of satisfaction, ownership and optimism than coaching. And following on from this, we can look at what coaching is not. Looking at what something isn't can often be as illuminating as looking at what something is. So coaching is not about, first of all, leading. It's not about managing. It's not about giving instructions. It's not about giving advice. And it's not about offering opinions. Oh dear. I often feel I hear people sigh when I tell them this in training sessions. I almost sense a collective question that goes along the lines of, aren't these things exactly what we're meant to be doing? Well, the answer to this is, of course, yes, absolutely. In any organisation, they are vital. It's just that in terms of coaching, none of these things are helpful. In fact, I'll go for one moment contradict myself with one of these and say that great coaching is a great leadership skill. The Hay Group highlighted this in a study they did of the 6 styles of leadership employed in organisations. However, this kind of leadership requires you as the leader and coach not to feel that you know best, have the answers, or feel the need to tell the person what to do. In other words, it requires you to not want to do the other 4 things in the list shown here, and by that I mean managing, giving instructions, giving advice, or offering opinions. So a very, very different sort of leadership in many ways. Great leaders are able to do this. They use coaching as one of their key leadership styles, along with the following at different times. That is, leadership styles are about coerciveness, authoritative, affiliative, democratic, pace setting. And interestingly, coaching was the style, the bottom one, that the Hay Group said was used in organisations, or least used in organisations, but the one that when used had enormous short and long-term benefits for organisations. And following on from this, we can also say that a coach does not need to be an expert. The only real expertise that is required is that involved in being an effective coach. I coach many people from a whole range of backgrounds and who are immensely influential, have immensely influential and complex jobs that I know little or nothing about. Now, rather than this being a hindrance, it's an enormous positive. It means that I'm never tempted to try to offer advice. And a coach does not, as well, need to know the right answer. This, of course, links to the above. I may feel as a coach at times that I can see what the person I'm coaching should do. This is, however, not the case. What might seem right to me in terms of any action to be taken could be absolutely wrong for another person. And a coach doesn't need to be in control. The only thing you control as a coach is the process, and even here there has to be some flexibility. The coachee, the person being coached, is in control of the goal they have, the possible actions they might take, and the final actions decided upon. And a coach does not need to fix it. Clearly, from all that I've said, the coach is not in a position where they have to feel they need to fix anything. How much is eventually fixed and what that fixed looks like is up to the client. If as a coach you've done a good job, then you'll know, and the client will know, that they've arrived at the best possible actions that to be taken, and that these will lead to positive outcomes, which may be viewed, I guess at times, as something being fixed. And finally, a coach does not need to heal it or make it better. And this is very similar to the idea that a coach's job is not to fix something. Fixing, healing, and making something better is very much down to the client. However, there is something that a coach must do, and that is to remove interference. So what do I mean here by interference? This is important in order for the individual to realize his or her own extraordinary innate abilities, to remove any interference an individual might be experiencing in order for that individual to realize his or her own extraordinary abilities. So what's interference? Well, interference is anything that distracts the individual from being successful, and this can include fear. The coachee must feel secure with you as their coach. It's the job of the coach to take away any fear that they might have about the coaching process. And a lack of concentration. The coach should ensure at all times that the coachee is fully engaged with the process. As I've grown in my experience as a coach, I would immediately raise the issue with a client if I felt that they were not immersed completely in the coaching process. If I didn't do this, I'd not be providing them with the best possible service. And anger. The anger inside a client is another emotion that learning and experience will provide you, as the coach, with the skills to effectively deal with. And this very much applies to boredom as well. And trying too hard. If a client is pushing too hard to find solutions, they may never appear. The skill of the coach is to enable the coachee to enter a state of relaxed but focused concentration. In this way, the creative side of the client, aspects within their subconscious as well as conscious mind, will be fully utilized. And lack of self-confidence. I believe that a major part of coaching is to grow the self-confidence of the coachee. The aim of coaching is for the client not to need you as their coach. When people grow in their self-confidence, their knowledge that they can move forward themselves, then they will move into a powerful zone where they are able to take the actions that will provide them with success. So let's now move on to the difference between coaching, counselling and mentoring. And as I mentioned earlier, there can be a great deal of confusion about this, and it's therefore important to have a clear understanding about the differences. There are skills of coaching, counselling and mentoring that are very similar because each of these is offering some sort of support to another person. So take a moment yourself to think about this. You may in fact wish to pause the video in a moment and divide a page into 3 columns, with coaching at the top of one, counselling at the top of another, and mentoring at the top of the third. This is an exercise I often carry out myself when I'm training people in coaching. Now try to put in each column the skills involved and the characteristics that are part of each of these 3 processes. In some cases you may think there are certain skills, there's a certain skill like listening, or a characteristic that's involved in all 3. So take a moment now, pause the video and think this through for yourself before you continue to watch this video. Okay, so welcome back. We'll now look at some of the similarities and differences between coaching, counselling and mentoring and see how these compare to what you've written down. Now I know that there will be debate and disagreement between people about how we distinguish between coaching, counselling and mentoring. In my view, this is fine. The important thing for you to do, and if you're introducing coaching into your organisation, is for everyone in the organisation to do this as well. It's to have a clear understanding about how you view coaching and to understand what it is and what it isn't. Well, first of all, listening is a skill that's part of what makes coaching, counselling and mentoring effective. However, as I've indicated here, I believe that it's even more important in coaching and counselling than maybe in mentoring. Great mentors would argue with this, of course, and they may well be right. Again, questioning and reflecting and clarifying are all key elements of coaching, counselling and mentoring. And in terms of advice, this is definitely not something that's offered in coaching, but it may be given in counselling, and it's most definitely is offered in mentoring. And coaching is something that is solution focused, and by this I mean that the client will have a clear idea of what the outcome or goal is that they desire. It's about moving towards rather than away from something. Counselling, on the other hand, is often not so much about moving towards a goal, rather than about moving away from something that is at the moment undesirable. It's about having an issue that needs to be resolved in order to get back to a position of feeling okay. Mentoring could be solution focused, but in many cases it involves the client trying out a number of things that may or may not work for them. And coaching without doubt involves a high degree of independence. The aim is for the coachee to no longer need you as a coach. You should always be aiming to do yourself out of a job. The client should feel empowered at all times. On the other hand, counselling can engender a degree of dependence that the client feels for the counsellor. And this can occur in mentoring as well, where the mentor appears to be the one who has the answers, so the mentee, as they are called, may be continually seeking out their support and assurance that what they're doing is right. Coaching also involves very generic supporting skills. As I mentioned earlier, you don't need to be an expert in the field that you may be coaching in. A head teacher, for example, could be trained as a coach and might coach an engineer, and an engineer might coach a head teacher, something like that. Counselling, on the other hand, involves detailed knowledge about the kind of support and advice required by those who seek out counselling. And a mentor is often someone who is in a line managing position, line managing someone else in an organisation, and is therefore part of a hierarchical structure. They'll be expected to have a certain knowledge, certain skills and expertise that they can pass on to the mentee. In terms of action, this is an intrinsic part of coaching. Thinking alone is not enough. The coachee or client must be prepared to take action following the coaching session. How much action takes place in counselling can be very varied. Counselling operates on an emotional level where feelings are often the most important consideration. In mentoring, action may take place, but this is often determined more by the mentor than the mentee. And finally here, coaching is very much strengths focused. The coach will work to support the coachee to be able to realise the talents, skills and characteristics that they have that they can use to go forward. Counselling may focus a lot of the time on the reasons why something has happened rather than the strengths that exist inside the actual individual. And the danger with mentoring can be that it's used as a deficit model. That is, it may concentrate on what someone can't do at the moment and therefore what they need to do to fill that gap. And finally in this video, I just want to cover where the three disciplines of coaching, counselling and mentoring may spend most time in terms of the three dimensions of the past, the present and the future. Okay, so we'll think about the past, the present and the future, and where coaching, counselling and mentoring spend most of the time. The question for you is, where do you think coaching, counselling and mentoring spend most of the time? Well, first of all, let's look at counselling. A big chunk of time may be spent in the past looking at things or reasons why an individual has arrived at their present position in life. A smaller amount of time is spent looking at the present and the future. And in fact, I may be being a bit generous here in terms of the amount of time spent in the present and the future. In many cases of counselling, neither may be as great as I've shown here in a lot of cases. In mentoring, the fundamental thing to do is to look at the present situation with the client and see how it might be improved. The past and the future are often of little concern. and so do coaching. Well, in coaching, very little time is spent looking in the past. This will only happen if the origin of values and beliefs is explored. And we'll look at that a little bit later in another video. In addition, in the early days of coaching, a client may want to spend some time perhaps explaining a little bit about themselves, so perhaps a little bit going into the past. But most time in coaching is spent looking at the present and looking at the future. Understanding the present situation is important because for any final destination and decision, we need to know where we're at the moment. The future is important because it holds the goal that the client is working towards, and therefore I've made it perhaps even bigger than the present in terms of coaching, in terms of the time spent in those particular dimensions, if you like. Now clearly the size of all of these boxes for all three disciplines can vary a great deal from one situation to another and with individual circumstances. Okay, so that's it for now. I hope sincerely that you've really enjoyed watching this first video as much as I've enjoyed making it for you. I also hope that you've learned a number of things from it and that this has stimulated your interest to learn even more about coaching. And I hope that you now have a clear understanding about coaching and being able to define what it is. I look forward to speaking to you and seeing you again in video 2 when I'll be looking at the 3 skills of coaching with you. Until then, please don't hesitate to contact me. My details are given here if you wish to discuss how I can support you with individual or organisational coaching and or organisational culture change. So once again, thank you for listening and watching, and very best wishes.